You know that feeling when you find something that belonged to your grandfather and you realize he kept a secret his entire life? Not a small secret. The kind of secret that, if it's true, means everything you know about your family history,
This is
about
nice, isn't
American
it?
history, is wrong.
It sure is.
My
Just
name
like
is
old
Silas
times.
Whitmore. I'm 68 years old.
Look at these carvings.
Widower
They
for
seem
5
ancient.
years now.
Yes, and this one
Retired
here is
mining
glowing
engineer.
faintly.
I live in the
Careful,
house my
we don't know what it
grandfather
does.
Nathan built in 1952, out here in the empty parts of New Mexico, where the sky goes on forever and your nearest neighbor is 3 miles down a dirt road that turns to mud when it rains. Last week I was fixing a crack in the basement wall. Nothing special, just an old house settling the way old houses do. But when I knocked on that wall to see how deep the crack went, I heard something. An echo. Not the dull thud of solid earth, a hollow sound, like there was space behind it. So I kept knocking, found the edges, and behind that wall I found a door. Not a regular door, a circular stone door 5 feet across weighing at least 500 pounds set into carved tracks that still rolled smooth after 70 years. And behind that door a stone staircase going down. Down past one level, down past two, down into darkness so complete my flashlight couldn't find the bottom. Here's the big question. My grandfather, a quiet man who worked in the mines, raised 6 children through the Depression, never said more than he had to. Why did he know about this? And more important, what was out there in the world above, terrible enough that human beings would carve an entire city into solid rock and keep it secret for nearly 200 years? If this video is playing while you're asleep, that's okay. I understand. The night is long. But if you're awake, if you're listening, I'm going to tell you a story, a true story, a story that maybe your grandfather knew too, but never told. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story reaches. Now let me take you back. Back to when I first suspected something wasn't quite right. I was 12 years old. It was 1968. The year everything seemed to be falling apart. Cities burning, boys dying in Vietnam, people shouting at each other on television about things I didn't understand yet. But out here in New Mexico, things were quieter, slower, the kind of place where the biggest news was whose cattle got loose or when the rains might come. Grandfather Nathan was 84 that summer, still strong, still sharp, but you could see age creeping in around the edges. The way he'd pause before standing up. The way he'd look at things like he was memorizing them, knowing he wouldn't see them forever. We were in the basement. He was teaching me how to fix a broken pipe, not with fancy tools, but with what you had on hand. Copper wire cloth strips, patience. That's how his generation did things. They made things last because they had to. I remember looking around that basement, really looking. The walls were stone hand-cut, fitted together so tight you couldn't slide a knife blade between them. The ceiling was arched like something from an old church, and the floor smooth flagstone, worn down in paths where generations had walked. "Grandpa," I said, "why is this basement so much deeper than Mr. Henderson's next door?" He stopped working, just stopped, his hands going still on the pipe wrench. When he looked at me, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not fear exactly, something else. The look of a man weighing whether to tell a secret or carry it to his grave. The moment stretched out. Outside, I could hear a meadowlark singing, inside just the drip of water from the pipe and the sound of our breathing. Finally, he said, "Silas, there are things from your great-grandfather's time, things from before that even. One day you'll understand." That was all. He went back to the pipe like nothing had happened, and I, being 12 and easily distracted, let it drop. Asked about something else? Forgot about it by dinner time. But he didn't forget. I know that now. He carried that moment with him, carried the question I'd asked and the answer he didn't give. Carried it until he died in 1965 when I was 31 and too busy with my own life to ask again. Now I'm 68, the same age he was when I asked that question. And I finally understand why he looked at me that way. He was deciding, trying to figure out if I was old enough, wise enough, trustworthy enough to know. He decided I wasn't, or maybe he decided the world wasn't ready, or maybe he was just tired of carrying the weight and wanted to set it down when he died. Whatever the reason, he kept quiet. The secret stayed buried. Until last Tuesday, the crack appeared 3 weeks ago. Nothing dramatic, just a hairline split running diagonal across the north wall of the basement, right behind the old workbench where Grandpa Nathan used to sharpen tools. I figured it was the usual settling. The house is 72 years old. Things shift, but it kept growing. By last week, it was wide enough to stick my fingernail in. That's when you start worrying about foundation problems. And foundation problems at my age with my savings are the kind of thing that can break you. So Tuesday morning, I went down to assess the damage. Brought my tools, my flashlight, my reading glasses so I could see what I was doing. It was just after dawn, the kind of light that's not quite day, yet everything's still soft and gray. I ran my hand along the crack. Cold stone, damp. That basement has always been damp even in August. It's one of the things I never questioned, just figured it was normal for a house built into the side of a hill. I tapped on the wall with my knuckle, checking for hollow spots, weak points, places where water might be seeping in behind the stone. Tap, tap, tap. Solid, solid, solid. Then tap. A different sound. Not the dull thud of stone backed by earth. A resonance. An echo like I was knocking on the side of a drum. I stopped. Listened. Tapped again. Same hollow sound. I stepped back, looked at the wall with different eyes. The crack wasn't random. It followed a line. Not perfectly straight, but deliberate. Like it was tracing something. Revealing something. I got my pry bar. Started working at the stones around the crack gently at first, then harder when I realized they were loose. Not loose like they'd broken. Loose like they'd been placed that way. Like they were meant to come out. The first stone came free in my hands. Behind it, darkness. An air, cool air flowing out like breath from a mouth. I pulled out another stone. Then another. Working faster now, my heart starting to pound in a way it hasn't pounded in years. Not from exertion. From something mouseous, recognition maybe. The feeling that you're about to find something you've been looking for without knowing you were looking. Within 20 minutes, I'd cleared enough stones to see what was behind them. A door. Not wood, not metal. Stone. A massive circular slab of carved rock set into the wall fitted so precisely into a circular frame that I'd walked past it 10,000 times and never known it was there. The stone was smooth, polished. In the center, there was a hole about 6 inches across, just big enough to stick your arm through. Around the hole, symbols were carved into the rock. Not letters, not numbers. Geometric shapes, spirals, crosses with equal arms. Old symbols. The kind you see on petroglyphs out in the desert left by people who lived here 1,000 years before anyone wrote anything down. I stood there for a long time, just looking. My flashlight beam playing across that stone door, catching on the symbols, making shadows that moved like something alive. At 68, you've lived long enough to know that some decisions change everything. Asking a woman to marry you, taking a job, buying a house. But there's another kind of decision, the kind where you know deep in your bones that once you make it, you can never go back. Standing in front of that stone door was one of those moments. I could have left it, sealed up the wall again, pretended I never saw it, gone back upstairs, made breakfast, lived out my remaining years in the same quiet way I'd lived the previous 5 since Martha died. But I couldn't. You know why? Because of what Grandpa Nathan said. One day you'll understand. This was the day. This was the understanding. I reached through that hole in the center of the door. My hand found a metal handle on the other side, cold iron worn smooth by hands I'd never know. I pulled. The door moved. Not easily. It weighed hundreds of pounds, but it moved, rolling sideways on those ancient tracks with a grinding sound like the earth itself groaning. Stone against stone, a sound that hadn't been heard in who knows how long. Behind the door, a staircase, cut directly into this bedrock. Each step exactly 8 inches high, 12 inches deep, perfect, deliberate, designed by someone who knew what they were doing. The stairs went down into darkness so complete it seemed to swallow my flashlight beam. I stood at the top for a moment. You know what I thought about? I thought about Grandpa Nathan, about that moment in 1968 when I asked why the basement was so deep, about the look in his eyes, about the secret he carried his whole life. And I thought, I'm going to find out what you knew, Grandpa. I'm going down there. Even if it kills me, even if it changes everything, I'm going to know. I put one foot on the first step, then the second. Then I was descending into the earth, into the dark, into the past. One step at a time, slow, careful. My left hand on the wall, my right holding the flashlight. At 68, bones don't heal like they used to. You fall down a stone staircase in the dark, alone in a place no one knows about. That's how they find you weeks later. The stairs were cold, not damp like the basement above, but dry cold, the temperature dropping with every step. My breath started to show in the flashlight beam. Little clouds of vapor that vanished almost before I could see them. Step 20, step 30, step 40. The staircase spiraled, winding down in a long curve. No windows, no light except what I brought with me. The walls were smooth, hand-carved, the tool marks still visible. After how many years? Find 100 more. At step 50, the ceiling opened up. The narrow shaft of the staircase widened into something larger. I couldn't tell how large. My flashlight couldn't find the edges. Step 60, 70, my legs were starting to ache. You think you're in decent shape for an old man, then you try to descend an ancient stone staircase and you remember what old means. Step 80, 90. The air was different now. Not musty, not stale, but clean, fresh. Like there was circulation, airflow, some system I couldn't see that kept the oxygen moving. At step 100, I reached the bottom. The staircase ended in a small landing. My flashlight beam swept across it, found a doorway, just an opening, no door leading into a larger space beyond. I stepped through. The room was maybe 30 feet wide, 40 feet long. The ceiling arched overhead, 12 feet high, at the peak carved into a perfect barrel vault. The walls were smooth, fitted stone, and on them carved directly into the rock were words. Hundreds of words, maybe thousands. Letters 3 inches high, cut deep and precise, covering every available surface. I walked closer, ran my hand over the carvings. They were in English. Recent enough that I could read them, but old enough that the style was different. Formal, careful. And there on the north wall in letters twice as large as the rest, Elijah Whitmore, 1889, my great-grandfather, my grandfather Nathan's grandfather. A man who died at 20 years before I was born, who I knew only from one faded photograph and the stories Grandpa would tell on winter evenings. Below his name, a passage. I read it out loud, my voice strange and hollow in that underground room. November 9th, 1889. My grandson Nathan turns 5 years old today. He does not know that this may be the last birthday any of us celebrate under the sun. The sky has been gray for 4 days now. Not from clouds, from ash. The well-water tastes of sulfur. The cattle refuse to drink. Sarah says the chickens have stopped laying. We are going below, all of us, 47 souls. I do not know if we will see the sun again, but I know this: if we stay above, we die. If we go below, we have a chance. That is enough. I stood there reading those words again and again. My great-grandfather Elijah, writing about my grandfather Nathan as a 5-year-old boy, writing about going underground, writing about survival. You know what I felt? Not confusion, not disbelief. I felt recognized, like someone from 135 years ago was speaking directly to me, like he knew I'd be standing here reading this trying to understand. Because I am here, I exist, which means they survived. Whatever happened up there, the gray sky, the ash, the sulfur water, they went down into the earth and lived through it. This place saved them. I swept my flashlight around the room again, slower this time, taking in details I'd missed. There were other carvings, other names, other dates. Jacob Miller, 1843. Ruth Brennan, 1912. Anonymous, 1974. That last one stopped me cold. 1974. That wasn't ancient history. That was 50 years ago. I was 18 in 1974. I was alive. I was working my first real job in the copper mines outside Silver City. Someone had been down here, in my lifetime, using this place, carving their name into the wall but not signing it. Why I walked to the far end of the room. There, carved into the stone at waist height, was something else. Not words. A map. A map of the American Southwest. Crude but recognizable. New Mexico in the center, Arizona to the west, Colorado to the north, Utah, Nevada, Texas. And scattered across this stone map, 23 marks. X's carved deep into the rock. Some with circles around them. Some with lines connecting them to other marks. Above the map, 3 words: the Watcher's Network. I traced the marks with my finger. One of them, right where we are now in the empty land southeast of Albuquerque, had a circle around it. Our location. But there were 22 others, each one marking a place. Each one I was beginning to understand marking another city like this one. Another underground refuge. Another secret that families like mine had kept for generations. My hand was shaking. I realized I'd been holding my breath. I forced myself to breathe slow and steady, the way you do when you're deep in a mine shaft and you need to stay calm. Questions were piling up in my mind faster than I could sort them. Who built these places when? How many people knew about them? Were they still used? Were there still people down in those other 22 cities living in the dark waiting for something? And the biggest question of all, what were they waiting for? I turned back to Elijah's inscription. Read it again. The sky has been gray for 4 days. From ash. We are going below. 1889. I tried to remember my history. What happened in 1889, I had a vague memory of something about a volcano. Krakatoa. No, that was earlier, but there were other eruptions, smaller ones. Eruptions that could fill the sky with ash for days, weeks, months. In 1843, the earliest date I'd seen. I knew that one. 1843 was called the year without a summer by some people. Crop failures, cold weather, starvation. 1974. I'd have to look those up, see what happened, see what pattern emerged. But I was starting to understand these weren't bomb shelters. They weren't hideouts from bandits or Indians or whatever other threats people faced out here in the old days. These were shelters from the world itself, from the sky, from the earth when it turned against you. I walked back to the center of the room, turning slowly, my flashlight beam sweeping across the carved walls. And that's when I noticed something else. There were passages, 3 of them. Openings in the walls, each one leading deeper. Each one marked with a Roman numeral carved into the stone above it. 1, 2, 3. 3 levels. No one walked to the passage marked 1, and shined my light down it. After about 20 feet, I could see stairs. More stairs going down. This wasn't just a room. This was the first level. There were more below. How deep did this go? I thought about going down right away, exploring further. But something stopped me. Maybe it was common sense. Maybe it was the fact that I'm 68 years old and already tired from the descent. Maybe it was the realization that I was completely alone underground with no one knowing where I was. If I got hurt down here, lost trapped, no one would find me. Marlo, my granddaughter, wouldn't even notice I was missing for days. She's 16, living with me since her parents died, but she's got her own life. School friends, drama I don't understand. She'd assume I was doing old man things. By the time she worried it might be too late. No, I needed to do this right, carefully. Get supplies. Tell someone where I was going. Maybe even bring help. But who could I trust with this? The answer came immediately. Gus. August Brennan. We've known each other 53 years. Worked together in the mines from the time we were both 18 until we both retired at 65. Our wives were friends. They died the same year, his Helen in March, my Martha in November. We understood each other without having to say much, the way men of our generation do. If I called Gus and said, I found something, I need you to come over, he'd be here within the hour. No questions until he saw what I wanted to show him. I took one last look around that room, memorizing it, making sure it was real, that I hadn't imagined it, that I wasn't having some kind of breakdown brought on by loneliness and grief. But no, it was real. The stone was solid under my hands. The carvings were precise. The air was cool and clean. This place existed. I walked back to the staircase and started climbing up. It was harder going up than coming down. My knees complained. My breathing got heavy. I had to stop twice to rest. But eventually I emerged back into my basement. The daylight filtering through the high windows seemed impossibly bright after the darkness below. I checked my watch. I'd been down there for an hour and a half. It felt like 15 minutes. I stood there for a moment looking at that open stone door, that black opening leading down. Then I did something I hadn't done in 5 years, not since Martha died. I called someone. Gus Brennan pulled up in his truck at 10:47 a.m. I know because I was watching the clock, wondering if I'd made a mistake, wondering if I should have kept this to myself. But when I saw him climb out of that beat-up Ford F-150, moving with the careful precision of a 72-year-old man whose body has been beaten up by 7 decades of hard work, I knew I'd made the right choice. He walked up to my porch, didn't knock, just opened the screen door and called out, "Silas." "In the kitchen," I said. He found me sitting at the table, 2 cups of coffee already poured. He took the chair across from me, the same chair he'd sat in 100 times over the years. Picked up the coffee, took a sip, waited. That's the thing about old friends. They don't rush you. "I found something," I said, "in the basement. Something that, I don't know what it is, Gus, but I think it's important. I think it's been there the whole time since Grandpa Nathan built this house. Maybe longer." He nodded slowly, set down his coffee. "You want to show me?" "Yeah." "Okay then." That's all we said. We finished our coffee in silence. Then I led him downstairs. When Gus saw that stone door standing open, he stopped on the bottom step. Just stopped and stared. "Jesus Christ," he said softly. "It wasn't a curse. It was a prayer." "Wait until you see what's behind it," I said. I led him through the door down the stairs. His descent was even slower than mine had been. Bad hip from a mining accident in '89. But he made it. We both made it. When we reached that first level, when Gus swept his flashlight across those carved walls and saw the names, the dates, the map, he went completely still. He walked to the wall, put his hand on Elijah's inscription, read it out loud, his voice rough. Then he turned to me. Silas, my grandmother's maiden name was Brennan, Ruth Brennan. He pointed to one of the names on the wall, the one dated 1912. That's her, he said. That's my grandmother. She died in 1968. I was 24. She used to tell stories about the time underground. I thought she was talking about root cellars, storm shelters. I never thought, he trailed off, looked around the room again. Our families built this together. Your great-grandfather, my great-grandmother. They were part of the same, what network community? Look at the map, I said. He did. Studied it for a long time. 23 locations, he said finally. 23 cities. How big is this, Silas? How far does it go? I don't know. There are more levels below. I haven't explored them yet. He nodded. Then we should. Now, you got somewhere else to be. I almost smiled. No, I guess I don't. We went through the passage marked I, found the stairs, went down to the second level. This one was different. Not a single room, but a series of chambers connected by short corridors. Some of the chambers were empty. Others had carved benches along the walls, stone tables, niches that might have held oil lamps. In one chamber, we found something that made my skin prickle. A carving of a family. Man, woman, 3 children. Crude stick figure, simple, but you could see the care that went into it. Above the figure's words, we survived. Tell them we survived. No name, no date, just that desperate message to the future. Gus and I stood there looking at it for a long time. Someone lived down here, he said, for real. Not just hiding for a day or two. They made a life, even if it was just for a little while. We kept going, found the passage to the 3rd level, descended again. The 3rd level was bigger. The chambers were more finished, more deliberately designed. There was a large central room with a domed ceiling. Around the edges, smaller rooms branching off. Sleeping quarters maybe, or storage. And in the central room we found the archive, metal boxes, dozens of them, sealed with wax stacked against one wall. Each one labeled with a year, 2003. The most recent one was labeled 2019. 5 years ago. Someone had been down here 5 years ago. While I was upstairs grieving for Martha, trying to figure out how to live alone, someone had been down here, maintaining this place, adding to its history. Gus picked up the box labeled 1889, worked at the wax seal with his pocket knife until it cracked. Opened the lid. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, were papers, journals, letters, all in the same careful handwriting I'd seen on the walls. He pulled out the first page, started reading. His lips moved silently. Then he looked up at me. Silas, this is a diary, Elijah's diary, from the 3 months they spent down here in 1889. 3 months. Listen to this. He read aloud, Day 47. Nathan asked today when we could go back up. I told him soon, but I do not know if that is true. The ash continues to fall. We can hear it sometimes like rain on the stone above us. The children are growing restless. Sarah does her best to keep them occupied, but there are only so many games to play, only so many stories to tell. We ration the food carefully. The well water remains clean. That at least is a blessing. But I fear what we will find when we finally emerge. Will the world above be recognizable? Will there be anything left to return to? Gus stopped reading, looked at me. 3 months underground. 47 people. How did they manage it? I don't know, but they did. We're here. We're proof they did. We opened more boxes, more journals, more stories, each one telling the same basic tale. Something happened above, something terrible. People came below. People survived. 1843, volcanic eruption in the Pacific Northwest. Ash clouds drifted east. Crops failed. Temperatures dropped. 2 months underground. 1912 earthquake. Multiple aftershocks. Fear of buildings collapsing. 1 month underground with people rotating in and out. 1935 Dust Bowl. Not a single event, but years of drought and wind and desperation. People used the underground chambers as refuges during the worst storms. 1974, I opened that box myself, inside a single page, typed on an old typewriter. To whoever finds this, the pattern continues. Every 40 to 50 years, something happens. Volcano, earthquake, weather, war. It doesn't matter what. What matters is being ready. We are the watchers. We maintain these places. We pass on the knowledge. We prepare for the next time. If you're reading this, you are one of us now, whether you know it or not. Learn, remember, pass it on. Anonymous. I read it twice. Then I handed it to Gus. He read it, set it down carefully. Watchers. That's what they called themselves. What we are, I guess. We didn't ask to be, I said. No, but here we are. We spent the next 2 hours going through the archive, reading fragments, piecing together a history that no one had taught us in school, a history of preparation, of survival, of families who loved their children enough to dig into solid rock and create refuges for disasters they couldn't predict, but knew would come. Finally exhausted, we made our way back up to level 1. We stood there looking at that map on the wall, those 23 marks. What do you think happened to the others? Gus asked. The other cities. I don't know. Some of them might still be there. Some might have collapsed. Some might have been found and sealed off. Or, Gus said slowly, some of them might still be used. We looked at each other. You thinking what I'm thinking, he asked. That we should find out, yeah, I nodded. Then we'll need supplies, maps, timbers. I got nothing but time, Silas. I thought about my life. The empty house, the quiet days, the slow march toward whatever comes next. No, I said. I got nothing but time. We climbed back up to my basement, emerged into the afternoon light. Neither of us spoke as we walked upstairs, made fresh coffee, and sat down at the kitchen table. Finally, Gus said, You gonna tell Marlo, I thought about my granddaughter, 16 years old, lost her parents in a car accident 3 years ago, came to live with her weird old grandfather in the middle of nowhere. She was doing okay, considering, but she had enough to deal with. Eventually, I said, when I understand it better myself, when I can explain it without sounding crazy. We sound crazy no matter how we explain it. True? We sat in silence for a while. Then Gus said, Silas, remember that question you asked me last year when we were both drunk on Martha's birthday? Which question? You asked me what I was afraid of, what kept me up at night. I remembered it had been a maudlin evening. 2 old widowers trying to honor the dead and failing, just getting sad instead. I remember. I told you I was afraid of being forgotten, of dying and having it not matter, of all those years of work and life and love just evaporating like they never happened. Yeah, he gestured vaguely toward the basement. This changes that. Our grandfathers, they weren't just workers. They weren't just ordinary men. They were part of something, something that mattered, something that might matter again. I nodded slowly. And now we are too. Yeah, now we are too. That's when we heard the front door open, footsteps in the hallway. Marlo's voice, Grandpa. You home? I looked at Gus. He looked at me. Without a word, we'd made a decision. Not yet. Not today. In here, I called. Marlo appeared in the kitchen doorway. 16 tall, with her mother's dark hair and her father's stubborn chin. She looked tired. School had been rough lately. Kids being kids, which is to say cruel in ways adults forget. Oh, hey, Mr. Brennan, she said, managing a smile. Didn't know you were here. Just visiting an old friend, Gus said. How's school? It's fine. The universal teenager answer that means it's not fine, but I don't want to talk about it. She grabbed a soda from the fridge, waved vaguely at us, and headed upstairs. We heard her bedroom door close. Gus stood up. I should go. Let you two have your evening. Same time tomorrow, I asked. We can start planning. Figure out which of those sites we want to check first. Tomorrow, he agreed. After he left, I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. The sun was setting, painting the kitchen walls orange and gold. Outside, the desert was doing what it always does, being beautiful and harsh and indifferent all at once. I thought about Grandpa Nathan, about that moment in 1968 when I asked my innocent question, about the weight he must have carried knowing what was beneath this house, knowing he couldn't tell, knowing he had to die with the secret intact. Or maybe he didn't die with it intact. Maybe he left clues. The deep basement, the careful stonework, the house built exactly here on this spot over this entrance. Maybe he was waiting for me to find it, waiting for me to be old enough, wise enough, ready enough. Well, Grandpa, I found it. I'm 68 years old, the same age you were when I asked that question. And now I understand. I understand the weight. I understand the choice. I understand why you stayed quiet. But I also understand something you maybe didn't know, couldn't know. The world has changed. We have internet now. We have ways to communicate, to organize, to share information that your generation never dreamed of. Maybe it's time. Maybe the secret doesn't have to stay buried anymore. Or maybe that's exactly the kind of thinking that gets people killed. I didn't know. Not yet, but I was going to find out. I went to my desk, pulled out a notebook, started writing down everything I could remember from below. The names, the dates, the pattern. Every 40 to 50 years. The last major event, 1974. That's 50 years ago, which means if the pattern holds, we're in the window. Right now, we're in the window when the next one should happen, whatever the next one is. I wrote until my hand cramped. Then I hid the notebook in my desk drawer under old tax returns and insurance papers. Places Marlowe would never look. Tomorrow, Gus and I would start planning. We'd pick the nearest site on that map, drive out there, see if we could find it, see if anyone else was still watching. But tonight, I just needed to sit with this, to let it settle, to understand that everything had changed. My grandfather kept a secret, his grandfather before him, generation after generation passing on the knowledge but keeping it hidden. Why, that was the question I couldn't answer yet. But I had to. Because if there's one thing I've learned in 68 years, it's this: secrets that big don't stay buried forever. Eventually, they claw their way to the surface. And when they do, you better be ready. Ready for what I didn't know. But I would learn, we would learn, Gus and I, two old men, two watchers whether we wanted to be or not. The sun went down. The desert went dark. And somewhere far below my feet, that stone city waited in silence. Waited for whatever came next. Morning came the way it always does out here, sudden and bright, the sun climbing over the desert hills like it has somewhere important to be. I'd been awake since 4, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what was beneath me. 18 levels, 280 feet of carved stone. A city built to hold 20,000 people that nobody knew existed. Except that wasn't true, was it? Somebody knew. Grandpa Nathan knew, great-grandfather Elijah knew, Gus's grandmother Ruth knew, and according to that journal from 1974, somebody a hell of a lot more recent than any of them knew too. Anonymous, 1974. 50 years ago when I was 18 and thought I understood how the world worked, I got up, made coffee, stood at the kitchen window, watching the light change the way the shadows retreat across the scrubland as the sun climbs higher. This land looks empty. People from back east, they come out here and they think there's nothing. Just dirt and rock and heat. They're wrong. There's history under this dirt. Stories carved in stone. Secrets that go down deeper than any mine shaft I ever worked. Gus arrived at 7:30. I heard his truck before I saw it. That diesel engine sounds like rocks tumbling in a dryer. He came in without knocking, poured himself coffee from the pot, and I'd made sat down at the kitchen table across from me. Didn't sleep much, he said. Me neither. Kept thinking about that map, those 23 sites. Yeah. We sat in silence for a while. That's the thing about friendship at our age. You don't have to fill every moment with talk. Sometimes silence says more. Finally, I pulled out the notebook where I'd copied down the coordinates from that stone map. The marks hadn't been labeled with GPS coordinates. Obviously, whoever carved that map did it long before satellites, but they'd been precise enough. I'd spent 3 hours last night matching them to modern maps trying to figure out exactly where each site was located. Closest one is about 90 miles from here, I said. Just over the border into Arizona. Middle of nowhere, which makes sense. You don't build something like this where people can stumble across it. What's the terrain? High desert, rocky, not much water. There's an old ghost town about 15 miles from the site place called Sentinel. Died when the copper mine closed in 1956. Gus nodded slowly. 1956. That's the same year someone wrote about the government trying to take over some of these sites. You think there's a connection. Don't know, but we're going to find out. When today, now. You got anything else you need to do? He smiled. It was the first real smile I'd seen on his face since Helen died. Silas, I'm 72 years old. My kids are in California. My grandkids think I'm already dead because I don't do Facebook or whatever the hell they're on now. I got nothing else to do but wait around to die. So yeah, let's go. That's when Marlowe came downstairs. She was wearing pajama pants and an oversized t-shirt from some band I'd never heard of. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. She looked at us sitting there with our coffee and our maps and our old man conspiracy, and I saw her mother in her face so clearly it hurt. You two going somewhere? She asked, heading straight for the coffee pot. Just a day trip, I said, out toward the Arizona border. Thought we'd do some exploring. Exploring what? Old mining sites. Gus and I used to work that territory. Feeling nostalgic, I guess. She poured her coffee, added what I considered an obscene amount of sugar, leaned against the counter looking at us. 16 years old, too smart for her own good. She knew I was lying. I could see it in her eyes. But she didn't call me on it. Instead, she said, "Will you be back for dinner?" "Should be." "Okay, be careful, you're both old." "Thanks for the reminder," Gus said dryly. She smiled, took her coffee, went back upstairs. I heard her bedroom door close. Gus looked at me. "You sure you don't want to tell her?" "Not yet. Not until I understand what we're dealing with. And if something happens to us when out there, what then? She'll never know." I'd thought about that. Thought about it all night. I wrote down everything. Put it in my desk. If something happens, she'll find it eventually. Eventually isn't the same as now. I know, but she's 16, Gus. She's dealing with being an orphan and living with her weird grandfather in the middle of nowhere and trying to survive high school, which is its own kind of war. I'm not going to dump this on her too. Not yet. He nodded, didn't argue. That's friendship, knowing when to push and when to let it go. We finished our coffee, packed supplies, water, food, flashlights, rope, first aid kit. The kind of gear you take when you're going underground and you're old enough to know all the ways it can go wrong. By 8:30, we were on the road. The drive to the Arizona border took 2 hours. Highway 60 east, then south on smaller roads that got progressively worse until we were on dirt tracks that might have been roads, or might have just been places where someone drove once and the desert remembered. The land out here is harsh in a way that's hard to explain to people who haven't seen it. It's beautiful, don't get me wrong. But it's a beauty that doesn't care if you live or die. The rocks are sharp, the sun is merciless. The distances are deceptive, something that looks like it's a mile away might be 10. We passed through Sentinel around 11. Ghost town is too generous a term for what's left. There are foundations, a few walls still standing, a church with no roof and empty windows staring at nothing. Once upon a time, 3,000 people lived here. Now there are scorpions and ravens in silence. I pulled off the road just past the church, checked the GPS against my notes. The site should be about 3 miles northwest. No roads. We'd have to hike. "You up for 3 miles?" I asked Gus. He was already getting out of the truck. "I'm up for whatever it takes." We loaded our packs, checked our water, started walking. The desert in May is already hot, but it's manageable if you know what you're doing. We stuck to the shadows where we could, moved slow, took breaks, drank water whether we were thirsty or not. Gus's hip was bothering him. I could tell by the way he walked, favoring his left side. But he didn't complain. Men our age, we've learned that complaining doesn't fix the problem. You just keep moving. After an hour, the terrain started to change. We were climbing now, picking our way up a long slope covered with loose rock and scrub brush. And there ahead of us, the land fell away into a box canyon. I stopped, pulled out the map. "Should be right around here." We spread out searching, looking for what exactly I wasn't sure. A door in the hillside, a vent shaft, some sign that humans had been here, that they'd carved into this stone. Gus found it. "Silas," he called, "over here." I made my way to where he was standing at the edge of the canyon. He was looking down at something. When I reached him, I saw it too. Steps, cut into the rock face, ancient, worn smooth by wind and time, but unmistakable. They led down into the canyon, disappearing around an outcropping about 30 feet below. "Think that's it?" Gus asked. "Only one way to find out." The descent was treacherous. The steps were narrow and there was no railing, just a rock wall on one side and a drop on the other. One slip and you'd fall 60 feet onto sharp rocks. We went slow. Very slow. Gus went first, testing each step before putting his full weight on it. I followed, keeping one hand on the wall, not looking down. When we reached the outcropping, we found what we were looking for. A door. Not stone like the one in my basement, but metal. Steel, rusted orange-brown by decades of exposure, but still intact. And on that door, stenciled in faded paint, Site B, authorized personnel only, U.S. government property. "Well," Gus said, "that answers one question. The government knows, or knew." 1956. Remember what that journal said? They wanted to use these places for nuclear shelters. The families refused. I ran my hand over the door. The steel was hot from the sun, rough with rust. There was a handle, a simple steel bar. I pulled. The door didn't move. I tried harder. Gus joined me. Together we pulled with everything we had. Nothing. "It's sealed," Gus said. "Locked or welded or both." I stepped back, looked at the door, the rock face around it. There's got to be another way in. These places were built with multiple entrances. Emergency exits. We searched the canyon. It took an hour, moving carefully over the broken ground, checking every shadow, every crack in the rock face. Finally, near the far end of the canyon, we found it. Not a door, a hole. Barely 3 feet across, half hidden behind a boulder. A ventilation shaft, probably. But big enough for a man to squeeze through if he was motivated enough. Or desperate enough. You thinking what I'm thinking? Gus asked. That we're too old for this. Yeah, but we're doing it anyway. Yeah. I went first. Squeezed through the opening into darkness. Dropped my pack down, first heard it hit stone maybe 6 feet below. Then I lowered myself through, hung by my hands for a moment and let go. The landing jarred my knees. I crouched there in the dark, breathing hard, waiting for my eyes to adjust. Behind me, I heard Gus coming through, the thud of his pack, the grunt as he dropped down beside me. We turned on our flashlights. We were in a tunnel. Rough carved about 4 feet high, forcing us to duck walk or crawl. The air was cool and dry, silent except for our breathing and the scrape of our boots on stone. We moved forward. The tunnel sloped downward. After about 50 feet, it opened up into a larger space. A room, similar to the one under my house, but different. This one was damaged. Part of the ceiling had collapsed. Rubble filled one corner, and the walls that should have had carvings, names, dates, were blank. Smooth. Empty. Nobody used this one, Gus said. Or if they did, they didn't leave a record. Or someone erased the record. We explored carefully, checking each passage, each chamber. The structure was here the same basic layout as my site. Multiple levels, passages going deeper, the infrastructure for water and air and life. But it was empty, abandoned, and not naturally abandoned. This felt deliberate, like someone had come through and stripped it clean. In what must have been the third level, we found something. A body, not recent. The skeleton was brown and brittle, the clothes rotted to scraps. But there was enough left to tell a story. A man, probably. Lying on his side in a corner, one hand reaching toward the wall, and on that wall, scratched into the stone, with what must have been his last strength, 3 words: they sealed us in. Gus and I stood there for a long time looking at those words, looking at the bones. Jesus Christ, Gus whispered. 1956, I said. The government came. The families refused to hand over the sites. So the government sealed them in, locked the doors, left them to die. I felt sick, cold despite the warmth. This wasn't ancient history. This was 68 years ago. People my parents' age had done this, had decided that it was better to murder families to seal them in their own refuge than to let them keep their secret. We need to document this, I said. Take pictures. Tell someone. Tell who? Gus asked. The same government that did it. He was right. Of course he was right. What were we going to do? Call the sheriff, the FBI. I report a 68-year-old murder committed by people who were probably dead themselves now. We took pictures anyway. Of the bones, of the words, of the sealed door we'd found outside. Evidence of something, even if we didn't know yet what we'd do with it. Then we left. Climbed back up through that ventilation shaft out into the bright Arizona sunlight. Neither of us spoke as we hiked back to the truck. The drive back to New Mexico felt longer than the drive out. We stopped once at a gas station outside Magdalena, bought sodas, and sat in the truck's air conditioning, not talking. Finally, Gus said, "So that's what happens if the secret gets out. That's what they do." That's what they did, 68 years ago. You think it's different now? I didn't answer, didn't know how to answer. The world had changed in 68 years. We had civil rights now, supposedly. Accountability, freedom of information. But we also had surveillance. Satellites that could read a license plate from orbit. Databases that knew everything about everyone. If the government wanted to bury a secret, now they had better tools than sealed doors. We need to know more, I said. We need to find a site that's still active, still maintained. Find people who know what this is really about. The Colorado site, Gus said. On the map, it had a circle around it. Same as yours. That means it's still operational, right? Maybe. How far? I pulled out my notebook, checked the coordinates I'd written down. 300 miles, 6-hour drive. When? I thought about Marlo, about the lie I'd told her this morning, about how many more lies I'd have to tell to do this. But I also thought about those bones in Arizona, about Grandpa Nathan's secret, about the pattern 40 to 50 years between disasters, and we were 50 years past the last one. Tomorrow, I said, we leave at dawn. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing that skeleton in my mind, kept seeing those scratched words. They sealed us in. Around midnight, I gave up. Went downstairs to the kitchen, made tea because coffee seemed wrong for the middle of the night. Sat at the table in the dark, looking out at the desert under the moon. That's when Marlo came downstairs. She didn't say anything at first, just got herself a glass of water, sat down across from me. We sat in silence for a while. Then she said, "You want to tell me what's really going on?" "What do you mean, Grandpa? I'm 16, not stupid. You and Mr. Brennan suddenly taking mysterious day trips. You've been different since, I don't know, since last week sometime. Something happened. Something you're not telling me." I looked at her, really looked at her. 16 years old, smart, tough, a survivor just like her ancestors had been survivors. Maybe Gus was right. Maybe it was time. "What if I told you," I said slowly, "that this house has a secret, that your great-great-great-grandfather built something under our feet that nobody knows about, and that I just found it?" She leaned forward. I'd say, "Tell me more." So I did. I told her about the door in the basement, about the city beneath, about the journals and the map and the 23 sites. I told her about Arizona, about the bones, about the pattern of disasters. I told her everything. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Can I see it, the city under our house?" "Now, why not? We're both awake." I thought about it, thought about all the reasons to say no. She was too young, it was too dangerous. It was the middle of the night. But then I thought about Grandpa Nathan, about how he'd kept the secret from me until it was almost too late, about how I'd missed my chance to hear it from him, to understand it while he was still alive to explain. "Get your shoes," I said. We went down together, through the basement, through the stone door, down the spiral stairs. I went first, Marlo behind me, her hand on my shoulder for balance. When we reached the first level, when I showed her the carvings, the names, the map, she just stood there, turning slowly, taking it all in. "This is real," she said, not a question, a statement, like she was convincing herself. "It's real." She walked to the wall, ran her fingers over Elijah's inscription, read it out loud, her voice echoing in that stone chamber. Then she turned to me. "You said there's a pattern. Every 40 to 50 years, something happens. What happened last time? In 1974, bum. I don't know yet. We're still piecing it together. And you think something might happen soon?" "Maybe. We're in the window." She nodded slowly, looked around again. "This is why you're going to Colorado, to find people who know more." "Yeah. Can I come, Marlo? I'm part of this too, aren't I? My ancestors built this. My blood is on these walls, same as yours. I have a right to know." She was right. Of course she was right. But she was also 16. "Let me and Gus scope it out first," I said. "Make sure it's safe. Then if it makes sense, yes, you can come to the next one." "Promise, promise." We stood there in silence. Then Marlo said something that made my blood run cold. "Mom and Dad, their accident, the car crash. Was it, do you think it was really an accident?" The question hit me like a punch, because I'd wondered the same thing. Late at night in the dark, I'd wondered. My son and his wife, driving home from Albuquerque, on a clear day, perfect conditions. The police said the car just veered off the road. No brake marks, no reason. I'd accepted it because what else could I do? Sometimes terrible things happen for no reason. But now, I don't know, I said honestly. I hope so. I hope it was just bad luck, bad timing. But I don't know. Her face went pale, her hands started to shake. This was the moment I'd been dreading, the moment and the weight of this secret became too much. "Grandpa," she whispered, if someone killed Mom and Dad because of this, because our family knows about these places." I pulled her close, held her while she cried. Not the quiet, controlled crying of a teenager trying to be tough. Real crying. The kind that comes from deep inside, from a place of grief that never fully heals. "We don't know that," I said. "We don't know anything for sure. The police investigated. It was ruled an accident. But you have doubts." "I have questions, that's all. Questions I don't have answers to yet." She pulled back, wiped her eyes, and I saw something change in her face. The fear was still there, but something else had joined it. Determination. "Then we need to find out," she said. "Whatever this is, whatever's going on, we need to find out the truth, for them." "Yeah, we should." But even as I said it, I felt the weight settling onto her shoulders. The same weight Grandpa Nathan had carried. The same weight I was carrying now. The weight of knowing that the truth might be more terrible than ignorance. We climbed back up together. At the top of the stairs, before we went through the door back into the normal basement, the normal house, the normal world, Marlo stopped. "Grandpa, thank you for telling me, for trusting me. Your family," I said. "This is your inheritance. The house, the secret, all of it. One day it'll be yours to protect." "Not for a long time, though." "Not for a long time," I agreed. But standing there looking at her young face in the flashlight beam, I wasn't so sure. The pattern was clear. Every 40 to 50 years, we were 50 years past the last event. Whatever was coming, it might come soon. And when it did, Marlowe needed to be ready. We all did. Gus arrived at 5 a.m. Dawn was just a threat on the eastern horizon. The sky, that particular shade of dark blue that means night is almost over, but morning hasn't quite started. Marlowe was already up. She'd packed us food sandwiches, fruit cookies she'd baked last night while I was sleeping. She handed Gus a thermos of coffee without being asked. "You're a good kid," Gus told her. "I know, she said. Then to me, "Be careful, both of you. And Grandpa, if you don't call me by tonight, I'm calling the sheriff." Deal. We headed out. The truck's headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness, the road stretching out ahead of us into nothing. For the first hour, neither of us talked. Just drove through the empty land as the sun came up, painting the desert in shades of orange and red and gold. Finally, Gus said, "You told her." "Yeah." "Good. She deserved to know." "You think so?" "I think secrets like this, they eat you alive if you keep them too long. Better to share the weight." He was right. I felt lighter somehow, despite everything. Despite the bones in Arizona. Despite the questions that kept multiplying faster than we could answer them. We drove through the morning, through Albuquerque, busy even at 6 a.m. north on I-25 past Santa Fe, into Colorado. The land changing as we went, the desert giving way to mountains, the air getting cooler. Around noon, we turned off the interstate, headed west on smaller roads, checked the GPS against my coordinates. The site was supposed to be near a town called Creed. Old mining town, still alive but barely. Population maybe 300 on a good day. We stopped for gas and lunch at a diner on Creed's main street. The waitress was maybe 50, worn down by life, but friendly in that way small town people are to strangers. "Passing through," she asked as she poured our coffee. "Just doing some exploring," I said. "Heard there's good hiking around here." "Sure is." "You staying the night?" "Depends on what we find." She left us alone after that. We ate our burgers in silence, both of us thinking about what came next. The site was 15 miles outside of town. The coordinates led us up a Forest Service road that got progressively worse until it was barely a road at all. Finally, I had to stop. Couldn't risk damaging the truck. "From here we walk," I said. We grabbed our packs. Started hiking up through pine forests that smelled like Christmas and felt about 40 degrees cooler than the desert we'd left that morning. The GPS said we had about a mile to go, but mountain miles are different from desert miles. There's elevation, trees blocking your line of sight, rocks to climb over. It took us an hour. And then finally we found it. Not a door in a hillside, not a ventilation shaft, something else entirely. A cabin. Small, maybe 20 by 20 feet, built from logs that looked at least 50 years old. Windows with shutters, a metal roof, a stone chimney with smoke rising from it. Smoke, which meant someone was inside. Gus and I looked at each other. "Well," he said, "we came to find people who knew. Looks like we found them." We walked up to the cabin. The door opened before we could knock. The man who stepped out was old, maybe 81. Tall, thin, with a white beard and eyes that seemed to look right through you. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. In his hand, a rifle. Not pointing at us, but not pointing at us either. "I saw you coming up the mountain," he said. His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. "Took you long enough. Figured you'd find this place eventually, once you opened the New Mexico site." I stared at him. "How did you know?" "Because that's how it works. One person finds their family's site, gets curious, starts looking for others. Same story every generation." He lowered the rifle. "Name's Ezekiel Carver, but people call me Zeke. You must be a Whitmore. You have the look." "Silas," I managed. "Silas Whitmore. This is August Brennan." "Brennan," Zeke nodded. "Ruth's family. Yeah, I know about the Brennans. You're all in the records." He stepped back, gesturing to the cabin. "Might as well come in. We got a lot to talk about." We followed him inside. The cabin was one room, simple. A wood stove for heat and cooking. A cot in one corner. Shelves lined with books and papers. And in the center of the room, a trap door set into the floor. Zeke saw me looking at it. "That goes down to the city. I'm the keeper for Site G. Have been for 40 years. My father before me. His father before him. All the way back to the beginning." "The beginning?" Gus asked. "When was the beginning?" Zeke poured coffee from a pot on the stove, handed us tin cups, sat down at a rough wooden table and gestured for us to do the same. 1838, he said. "That's when the first site was built. Not the one under your house, Silas. Different one, doesn't matter where it's gone now, collapsed in an earthquake in 1887. He took a sip of coffee. A group of families, mixed group white settlers, Mexicans, Hopi, a few escaped slaves. They'd all seen it happen before, you understand. Seen what happens when the world turns against you. Drought, famine, war, disease, they were tired of being caught unprepared. So they built the cities, I said. So they built the cities. Took them 10 years to finish the first one. But once they had the technique down, once they knew what worked, they spread. Taught other communities, family to family, always quiet, always secret. By 1900, there were 37 sites across the Southwest. The map shows 23, Gus said. 23 are left. The rest were destroyed, collapsed, flooded, or, he paused, or what happened in Arizona. So he knew about Arizona, about the bones, about the government. They sealed them in, I said, murdered them. Not all of them. Most of the families at the Arizona site made it out. But yeah, the government killed some, killed them, and covered it up. That was 1956. The Cold War. They wanted to use our cities as fallout shelters, military command posts. When we refused, he shrugged. They got ugly. Why didn't you fight back? Gus asked. Go public. We thought about it, but going public meant losing what we'd built. The government would have confiscated every site, and next time disaster struck, and there's always a next time, we'd have nowhere to go. So we made a choice. We stayed quiet, kept the secret, maintained what sites we could. He stood up, walked to the trap door, pulled it open. Below, I could see stairs descending into darkness. This is the last fully active site, Zeke said. The only one that's fully maintained, fully supplied, ready to shelter people. The others, the ones still marked on your map, they're there, but they're not ready. No water, no supplies, no keepers, just empty stone waiting. Why is this the only one? I asked. Because there's only so many of us left. The families scattered, kids moved to cities, didn't want to live in the middle of nowhere maintaining an underground bunker for a disaster that might never come. Can't blame them, really. He looked at me. How many people know about your site? 3, me Gus, my granddaughter. That's more than most. My kids won't come near this place. They think I'm crazy, living up here alone, guarding a hole in the ground. Maybe I am crazy. He closed the trapdoor. But I'm a crazy old man who knows what's coming. What is coming? Gus asked. Zeke walked to his shelves, pulled down a thick binder, opened it on the table. Inside graphs, charts, data points going back decades. You know about the pattern, right? 40 to 50 years between events? We nodded. It's not random. There's a geological cycle. Volcanic activity in the Cascades and Yellowstone region, seismic activity along the San Andreas and the Wasatch Faults. Climate patterns, droughts that last decades followed by floods. It's all connected, and it all cycles. He pointed to the most recent data. We're overdue. Last major event was 74. Minor earthquakes, some flooding, but nothing catastrophic. Before that, 1935 Dust Bowl. Before that, 1912 earthquakes. 1889 volcanic eruption. 1843 volcanic winter. So you're predicting another eruption? I asked. I'm predicting Yellowstone, Zeke said flatly. The supervolcano. It's been showing signs for 5 years. Increased seismic activity, ground deformation, rising temperatures in the thermal features. The USGS knows. They're monitoring it, but they're not telling the public because they don't want to cause panic. When? Gus asked. Could be next week. Could be 10 years. But based on the pattern, based on the body, my best guess, within the next 5 years. Probably sooner. He closed the binder, looked at us with those sharp eyes. When it blows, and it will blow, it'll be a VEI 7 eruption. Maybe VEI 8. That means ash clouds covering 2/3 of the country. Temperatures dropping 10 to 15 degrees globally. Crop failures. Famine. Millions dead in the first year. The cabin was silent except for the crackling of the fire in the stove. How many people can this site hold? I asked finally. 5,000 if we pack them in tight. For about 2 years, given the supplies I've stockpiled. That's not enough. No, it's not. Your site could hold another 20,000, but it's not ready. No supplies, no infrastructure. It would take months to prepare. Months we might not have. I thought about Marlowe, about the promise I'd made, about all the people in New Mexico who had no idea what was coming. What if we got it ready? I said. What if we prepared the New Mexico site, found other keepers, opened up the other cities that are still intact? Zeke studied me. That's what my father tried to do, back in 1974. He reached out to other families, tried to rebuild the network. You know what happened? Most people didn't believe him, called him crazy. And the ones who did believe, the government found out, started asking questions, investigating. My father had to go dark, spent the last 10 years of his life hiding up here paranoid that they'd come for him. So we're supposed to just give up, let millions die. I'm not saying give up. I'm saying be smart, be quiet. Prepare the people you can reach, the ones you trust. Build your network slowly. And when the time comes, when Yellowstone blows, or the earthquakes hit, or whatever form the disaster takes, you open the doors. You save who you can save. He was right. Deep down, I knew he was right, but it felt wrong, felt like cowardice. There's something else you should know, Zeke said, about why we keep this secret. It's not just about the government, it's about human nature. He pulled out another folder. This one contained newspaper clippings, articles from 1935, headlines about the Dust Bowl, and underneath articles about violence, riots, people killing each other over food, water, land. When disaster strikes, when resources get scarce, people get desperate. And desperate people are dangerous. If word got out that there are underground cities, cities with food and water and shelter, what do you think would happen? People would fight to get in, kill to get in, and the cities would be overrun, supplies exhausted in weeks instead of years. So we let them die, Gus said quietly. We save who we can save. That's all anyone can ever do. We sat there for a long time, the fire crackling, the wind moving through the pines outside. 3 old men in a cabin on a mountain talking about the end of the world. Finally, I said, I need to see it. The city under here. I need to know it's real. Zeke nodded, stood up, opened the trap door again. Then let's go down. We descended together. Down the stairs, into the earth, into the cold and the dark and the silence. Site G was bigger than mine. More levels. Zeke said it went down 22 levels instead of 18. Better preserved, better supplied. I saw storage rooms filled with canned goods, water tanks holding thousands of gallons, medical supplies, tools, seeds, everything you'd need to survive for years underground. And in the deepest level, Zeke showed us something else, a room he called the archive. Maps, not carved in stone like mine, but printed on paper, laminated, detailed, showing all 23 sites, showing the network of tunnels that connected some of them. Yes, tunnels, miles long, running through the bedrock so people could move between cities without surfacing. Journals, thousands of them. Records going back to 1838. Stories of survival, of disasters, of the pattern repeating over and over. And predictions, calculations, models showing when the next event would likely occur. All of them pointed to the same window, 2024 to 2029. We were in it, right now, the danger zone. This is why I stay, Zeke said, looking around the archive. This is why I maintain this place. Because when it happens, people will need this. Need the knowledge, need the shelter, need to know they're not alone. We climbed back up eventually. Back to the cabin, back to daylight and the normal world. Before we left, Zeke gave me a copy of the archive's index. Hundreds of pages listing every document, every journal, every piece of information they'd collected over nearly 2 centuries. Take it, he said. Study it. Share it with people you trust. Build your network. And when the time comes, we'll open the doors. How will we know? I asked. How will we know it's time? He smiled grimly. You'll know. The earth will tell you. And when it does move fast, you'll have hours, maybe a day, not more. We shook hands. His grip was strong despite his age. One more thing, he said. Your son and his wife. The accident 3 years ago. I froze. What about it? Might not have been an accident. There were other deaths around that time. Other families connected to the sites. Could be coincidence. Could be the government tying up loose ends. Just be careful. Watch your back. And watch that granddaughter of yours. The words hit me like a physical blow, because they confirmed what I'd been afraid to think. Do you have proof? I asked. No, just patterns. A keeper in Utah died in a house fire 2 years ago. Another one in Nevada, heart attack, they said, but he was 52 and healthy. Your son's car accident. Could all be coincidence. He paused. But I don't believe in that many coincidences. Why would they kill us now, after all these years? Because someone's preparing, getting ready, and they don't want anyone else to know. They want the sites for themselves. The drive home was quiet, both Gus and I processing everything we'd learned, everything we'd seen. It was almost midnight when we pulled up to my house. The lights were on. Marlo was waiting. She came out onto the porch as we got out of the truck. looked at our faces. You found it, she said. You found people who know. Yeah, I said. We found it. And we have work to do. And 6 months later, I was standing in my kitchen at 4 in the morning, watching the news on my laptop with the sound turned down so I wouldn't wake Marlo. The headline read, Yellowstone seismic activity reaches 5-year high. Below it, a USGS spokesperson saying what they always said, no immediate cause for concern. Yellowstone experiences frequent earthquake swarms. This is normal volcanic behavior. Normal, that word again. Like there was anything normal about a supervolcano that could bury half the country in ash. I'd spent the last 6 months learning to read between the lines, learning what no immediate cause for concern really meant. It meant we're concerned, but we're not going to cause a panic. The earthquake count had gone from 50 per day to 200. Ground deformation had increased by 18 centimeters. Water temperatures and some thermal features had jumped 15 degrees. All normal according to the USGS. All terrifying according to Zeke's data. I closed the laptop, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table in the dark, thinking about how much had changed in half a year. The New Mexico site, our site, was ready now. Not perfectly ready, not ready for 20,000 people, but ready for 3,000, maybe 4 if we packed them tight. We'd done it quietly, carefully. Gus and I and a few others we trusted. Jack Henderson, my neighbor. Doctor. Sarah Kim, the physician who treated Martha in her final months. Pastor Michael Reyes from the church in Magdalena. A handful of others. Good people. People who could keep a secret. We'd stockpiled food, water, medical supplies, fixed the ventilation system, tested the wells, cleared debris from the lower levels, made it livable. And we'd made a list. That was the hardest part. Making a list of who we'd save when the time came. 3,000 slots in a county of 20,000 people. How do you choose? How do you decide who lives and who dies? We'd tried to be fair. Families with children got priority. Medical professionals, teachers, engineers, people with skills that would matter when we came back up. People who could help rebuild. But fair doesn't mean easy. Every name we added meant someone else we couldn't save. I'd put Marlo's name at the top of the list. That was the only choice I didn't agonize over. The coffee finished brewing. I poured a cup. Stood at the window watching the sun come up over the desert. Marlo came downstairs around 6. She'd changed in the last 6 months, grown up in ways that had nothing to do with age. She knew now, knew what was coming, knew what her family had been preparing for across generations. Couldn't sleep, she asked, pouring her own coffee. Yellowstone's acting up again. I saw 200 earthquakes yesterday. She'd been following it too. Of course she had. We all were. Everyone on the list. Everyone who knew. School today, I asked. Half day. Then I'm helping Mr. Brennan move supplies. Gus had become her mentor, teaching her things she'd need to know. How to ration food, how to purify water, how to keep people calm in tight spaces. Old skills from his mining days applied to a new purpose. She was a good student. Quick. Practical. Scared, but not letting the fear stop her. Be careful, I said. Always am. She kissed my cheek on her way out. I watched her drive off in her beat-up Honda, heading toward whatever normal teenage life she could still maintain, while knowing the world might end. That was another thing I'd learned in 6 months. You can know the apocalypse is coming and still have to do your homework, still have to go to work, still have to live your life right up until the moment everything changes. My phone buzzed. Text from Zeke. Deformation spike, 22 centimeters. Call when you can. I called. He answered on the first ring. You see the news, but still, I saw. It's accelerating, Silas. The pattern's getting clearer. I'm putting us at 70% probability within 6 months now, maybe higher. You told the others. Sending out the alert today. Everyone on the network needs to be ready. The network. That's what we called it now. 23 sites, 7 still functional, about 40 keepers total, scattered across 5 states. Old men and women, mostly. A few younger ones like Marlo learning from their grandparents. We'd connected over the last 6 months. Carefully. No emails, no phones that could be traced. Old-fashioned letters, in-person meetings, building trust slowly. Not all the sites could be saved. Arizona was gone. 2 others had collapsed. 3 more were too compromised to use. But 7 sites properly prepared could hold maybe 30,000 people total. 30,000 out of a population of, 50 million in the affected zone. It was a drop in the ocean. But it was something. Silas, Zeke said, there's something else. I'm getting reports. Government activity near some of the sites, helicopters, survey teams. They might be preparing their own shelters. Let them. Yeah, but if they find ours, they won't. We're careful. Careful isn't the same as invisible. He was right. Of course he was right. But what could we do? Stop preparing. Give up. We keep going, I said. We're committed now. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, thinking about what committed meant, thinking about the bones in Arizona, about my son and daughter-in-law's accident, about what happened to people who threaten secrets this big. The rational part of my brain said I should stop, walk away, live out my remaining years in peace. But there was another part. The part that had Elijah Whitmore's blood, the part that remembered reading those words carved in stone, we survived. Tell them we survived. We survived so others could survive. That's what it meant to be a watcher. I finished my coffee, went downstairs to the basement, through the stone door that stayed open now, down to the first level. We'd put in electric lights, running off solar panels and batteries. The carvings were easier to see now. Elijah's words, Ruth's name, the anonymous message from 1974. I'd added my own last month, carved it myself with a chisel and hammer the old way. Scandalous Whitmore, 2024. For Marlo, for everyone who comes after. We're ready. We remember. We'll endure. Not eloquent, but true. I walked through the levels, checking supplies, testing equipment, making sure everything was ready. Because Zeke was right, it was accelerating. The earth was waking up. And when it did, we'd have hours, maybe less. 3 months later, October now, the desert cooling toward winter. Gus called me at 2 in the morning. Turn on the news, he said. I did. The headline, Unprecedented Earthquake Swarm at Yellowstone, 850 quakes in 24 hours. The USGS spokesperson looked tired, scared even. We're elevating the alert level from normal to advisory. This does not mean an eruption is imminent, but we're recommending that people in the immediate Yellowstone area review their evacuation plans. Review your evacuation plans as if you could evacuate from a supervolcano. This is it, Gus said. Isn't it? I don't know, maybe. What do? We wait, we watch, we don't panic. But I was panicking. Inside, where Gus couldn't see, I was terrified. I called Zeke, got voicemail, called again. Still nothing. Tried the other keepers. Most didn't answer. The ones who did were all saying the same thing, watching, waiting, getting ready. By dawn, the earthquake count was over 1,000. Marlo came downstairs, saw me at the computer, coffee going cold beside me, 20 browser tabs open to different monitoring sites. Grandpa, it's starting. She sat down next to me, watched the seismographs jumping. Read the headlines. How long do we have? If it's going to erupt, could be today, could be another month. But I think we need to start moving people. Get them ready. The list. Yeah, the list. We started making calls, carefully. Coded language we'd agreed on months ago. Family reunion this weekend. Bring the kids. Pack for a few days. Some people understood immediately. Others asked questions we couldn't answer over the phone. We told them to come by the house. We'd explain in person. By noon, we'd contacted about 100 families, maybe 400 people. They'd come when we called, because they trusted us, because we'd spent months building that trust. But that still left 2,600 slots to fill. Pastor Reyes helped. Dr. Kim helped. They reached out to their networks, their trusted people. By evening, we'd accounted for maybe 1,500. The rest, we'd have to choose in the moment, when the time came, if the time came. The earthquakes continued. 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 in a single day. Zeke finally called back. I'm evacuating Site G, bringing everyone down. You should do the same. It's too soon. We'll cause a panic. Silas, I've been watching this for 40 years. My father watched it for 40 before that. This is the real thing. I can feel it in my bones. That night, Gus and I made a decision. We'd start moving families into the site. Not all at once, in waves, quietly. We started with families with young children. 30 families. About 100 people total. We told them it was a drill, a practice run, bring supplies for 3 days. We'd see how the systems worked with people in them. Some believed us. Some knew we were lying. But they came anyway. Watching them descend into the earth, parents carrying children, old folks helping each other down the stairs, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. These people would survive. Whatever happened up here, down there, they'd be okay. We settled them in, showed them the sleeping areas, the kitchens, the water systems. Marlo organized activities for the kids. Games. Stories. Anything to keep them from being scared. It worked. After a few hours, the fear turned to curiosity. Kids exploring the tunnels like it was an adventure. Parents relaxing a little, seeing their children safe. That night, I stayed up on the surface with Gus, monitoring the news, watching the earthquake counts, 2,500, 3,000. The ground in Yellowstone had risen another 10 centimeters. How do the people down there not know? Gus asked. How is this not national news? It is national news, but there's a difference between news and panic. They're reporting it. They're just not saying what it means. Around midnight, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. Mr. Whitmore, a woman's voice, professional, calm. My name is Director Patricia Morrison. I'm with Homeland Security. I need you to listen very carefully. My blood went cold. We know about the sites, she said. We've known for some time, and right now we need your help. I don't know what you're talking about. Mr. Whitmore, please. We don't have time for this. Yellowstone is going to erupt. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, but soon, very soon. We have government shelters, but not enough space. Not nearly enough. We need the Watchers' sites. I said nothing. We're not going to take them from you, she continued. We're not going to repeat the mistakes of 1956, but we need to coordinate. We need to know how many people you can shelter. How did you get this number? We've been monitoring communications. We know about the network. We know about the list. Mr. Whitmore, I'm not calling to threaten you. I'm calling because you have resources the country needs. And because if we don't work together, millions more people will die than have to. I looked at Gus. He was watching me, trying to figure out who I was talking to. What do you want? I asked Morrison. A meeting tomorrow. You, me, and representatives from the other sites. We'll share information. We'll coordinate. We'll save as many people as we can. And if I say no, then you condemn thousands of people who could be saved. Is that what you want? It wasn't. Of course it wasn't. But I didn't trust them. Couldn't trust them. Not after Arizona. I need to talk to the others, I said. You have 12 hours. I'll call back at noon tomorrow. Please, Mr. Whitmore. We're trying to do the right thing here. She hung up. I sat there, phone in my hand, mind racing. Who was that? Gus asked. The government. They know. They want to work with us. It's a trap. Maybe, or maybe it's real. I called Zeke, told him about Morrison's call. He was quiet for a long time. Then, my father got a call like that in 1974 from a man who said he wanted to help. 3 days later, they raided his house, took all his documents, threatened him with prosecution if he didn't cooperate. So it's a trap. I didn't say that. I said that's what happened to my father. But this is different. This is Yellowstone. This is big enough that maybe, just maybe, they need us more than we need them. So what do? You take the meeting, but you don't go alone. And you don't tell them everything. You find out what they know, what they want, and then you decide. After I hung up, Gus and I sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he said, you know what I keep thinking about that skeleton in Arizona? Those words, they sealed us in. I know. What if they do it again? What if this is just a way to find all the sites so they can take control? Then we fight back, somehow. We're old men, Silas. What are we going to fight with? The truth. We document everything. We have people on the outside who know. If something happens to us, if they try to seal us in or take over, the whole world will know. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was something. That night, I barely slept. I kept going down to check on the families in the shelter, making sure they were okay, making sure we were really doing this. Around 5 a.m., I found Marlo in the 3rd level. She was reading to a group of kids, some picture book about a bear in a forest. When she finished, the kids wandered off to play. She looked up at me. The government called, I said quietly. I heard, through the vents. Sound carries down here. What do you think I should do? She considered. 16 years old, and I was asking her advice about whether to trust the federal government with the lives of thousands of people. I think, she said slowly, that Grandpa Nathan didn't trust them. Great-great-grandpa Elijah didn't trust them. And that skeleton in Arizona trusted them and died. So I say no. I didn't say that. I said you should be careful. Go to the meeting, listen. But don't give them everything. Keep some sites secret. Keep some people off the official lists. Because if they betray you, if they try to take over, we'll still have places to go. Smart kid. Smarter than me, maybe. Okay, I said. That's what we'll do. The meeting was set for 2 p.m. at a hotel conference room in Albuquerque. Neutral ground. I drove up with Gus. Zeke flew in from Colorado. 2 other keepers came from Arizona and Utah. 5 old people in a conference room about to negotiate with the federal government about the end of the world. Director Morrison was younger than I expected. Maybe 50, sharp eyes, expensive suit. She had 2 people with her, a man in a military uniform with stars on his shoulders and a woman with a USGS badge. We sat across the table from each other. Nobody shook hands. Morrison spoke first. "Thank you for coming. I know you have no reason to trust us, given our history." Oh, she looked directly at me. "I know about Site B, about what happened in 1956. That was wrong, unforgivable. I can't change the past, but I can promise you it won't happen again." "Promises are easy," Zeke said. His voice was hard. "My father got promises. I'm not your father's contact. And this isn't 1956. The situation is different. The stakes are different." She nodded to the USGS woman. "Dr. Santos." The scientist pulled up a presentation on a screen. Graphs, data, projections. "Yellowstone will erupt within 72 hours, she said flatly. "We're 95% certain. The magma chamber is destabilizing. The earthquake swarms are accelerating. We've detected harmonic tremors, the signature of magma movement. This is happening." She clicked to the next slide, a map of the United States, half of it covered in red. Immediate kill zone 100-mile radius. Total devastation. After that, ashfall zones. Most of Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, parts of Colorado, and Utah will be buried under 1 to 3 feet of ash within the first week. The rest of the western states will get several inches, and the ash cloud will spread globally. Another slide, temperature projections. Global temperatures will drop by 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. Growing seasons will be shortened by months. Crop failures worldwide. We're estimating 2 billion deaths from starvation in the first 2 years. The room was silent. "We have government shelters," Morrison said. "Continuity of government facilities. But they'll hold maybe 5,000 people total. Political leadership, military command, essential personnel. That's it. The rest of the country. We have nothing, except you." She looked at each of us in turn. "We know you have 7 functional sites. We estimate total capacity around 30,000 people. That's not enough to save everyone, but it's enough to preserve communities. Seeds of civilization for rebuilding. We need to coordinate. We need to fill those sites with the right people, not just your families and neighbors, but scientists, doctors, engineers, teachers, people who can help humanity survive what's coming." "And what do you get out of this?" I asked. "Survival of the Republic. Survival of the human race. Take your pick." "You want control," Zeke said. "You want to put your people in our sites and tell us what to do." "No, we want coordination. You keep control of your sites. You choose who gets in. We just ask that you consider including some of our people, specialists we've identified, people with skills that will matter." The general spoke up. "We're also offering protection, military security for the sites, supplies from government stockpiles, medical support, communication equipment so you can stay in contact with each other and with us." It sounded reasonable. Too reasonable. "What's the catch?" Gus asked. Morrison smiled grimly. "The catch is that if this goes wrong, if the sites fail, or if we can't get people to them in time, we all die anyway. The catch is that we're trusting you as much as you're trusting us. The catch is that none of us have any good options, so we have to try the least bad one." I looked at Zeke, at the other keepers, reading their faces. They were thinking what I was thinking. This could be a trap, but it could also be our only chance. "We need to discuss this privately," I said. Morrison nodded. "Take the room. We'll wait outside." They left. The 5 of us sat there. "It's a trap," one of the other keepers said immediately. "Has to be." "Maybe," Zeke said. "But what if it's not? What if they really are trying to save people? Then why now? Why not reach out months ago? Because months ago they could still pretend it wasn't happening. Now they can't." We argued for 20 minutes, voices getting louder, then softer. Old fears versus new realities. Finally, I said, "Here's what I think. We work with them, but carefully. We give them access to some sites. Not all. We take some of their specialists. Not all. We accept their help, but we don't become dependent on it. And we document everything. If they betray us, the whole world will know." "And if Yellowstone erupts before we can get everyone to safety," Gus asked, "what then, Borshimanatas? Then we save who we can save, like we've always planned." We voted 3-2 in favor of working with the government. We called Morrison back in, told her we'd coordinate with conditions. She agreed to all of them. Too easily, maybe. But we were committed now. We spent the next 3 hours working out details. Which sites would take which people, how we'd communicate, how we'd handle security. By the time we left, it was dark. The earthquake count at Yellowstone had passed 4,000 for the day. On the drive back to New Mexico, Gus said, "We just made a deal with the devil. Maybe, or maybe we just saved 30,000 lives. Or maybe we just told them where all the sites are so they can take control when the time comes." Yeah, maybe that too. We drove in silence for a while. Then my phone rang. Marlo, her voice was shaking. "Grandpa, you need to come home. Now." "What's wrong?" "The earthquakes, they're not just at Yellowstone anymore. We just felt one here. A big one. And the news is saying there's activity along the Wasatch Fault. And the San Andreas. It's not just Yellowstone, it's everything." I looked at Gus. He'd heard. "We're coming," I said. "Start getting people to the site. Everyone on the list. Tell them it's happening. Tell them to come now." I hung up, pressed the accelerator down. Behind us, the sun was setting. Ahead, the sky was already dark. And somewhere beneath our feet, the earth was waking up. We made it home in 2 hours. Broke every speed limit. Didn't care. The scene at the house was controlled chaos. Cars parked everywhere, families streaming into the basement. Marlo directing traffic, checking names against the list. She saw me. Relief flooded her face. "How many?" I asked. "About 800 so far. More coming?" "The earthquakes. 2 more. Not big, but everyone felt them. People are scared." I went down to the site. All the lights were on now. No more secrecy. No more pretending. The main chambers were filling up. Families claiming spaces. Parents trying to keep kids calm. Old people sitting on stone benches looking shell-shocked. Dr. Kim was setting up a medical station. Pastor Reyes was organizing volunteers. Jack Henderson was managing the supplies. It was working. Barely, but it was working. I found Gus in the 3rd level helping an elderly couple down the stairs. "Radio says there are earthquakes in California now," he said. "And Oregon. And Nevada. The whole damn ring of fire is waking up. How long until Yellowstone? Could be hours, could be days, but soon." I went back up, kept coordinating, kept checking names, kept telling people where to go, what to do. Around midnight, we hit capacity. 3,000 people in a space designed for 20,000, but only prepared for 3,000. We had to turn people away. That was the hardest thing I've ever done. Looking into the faces of families I'd known for years, people I'd worked with, worshipped with, lived alongside, and telling them there was no room. Some begged, some cried, some got angry. One man, Pete Alvarez, who I'd known for 30 years, grabbed my arm. "Silas, please. My grandkids. They're 6 and 8. You can't leave them out here." I looked at his face, saw my own fear reflected back at me. "Bring them," I said. "Just the kids and their mother. We'll make room." He broke down, thanked me, went to get his family. Gus pulled me aside. "Silas, we can't keep doing that. We're already over capacity." "I know. If you keep letting people in, we won't have enough supplies. We won't be able to sustain everyone." "I know. But you're going to do it anyway." "I'm going to try to save as many as I can. Isn't that what we've always been trying to do?" He sighed, nodded. "Yeah, I guess it is." By 2 a.m., we had 3,500 people in the site. We'd exceeded safe capacity by 500, but we'd saved 500 more lives. I sealed the main door, the big stone wheel rolling closed for the first time in 70 years. People watched in silence as it ground shut. We were committed now. No going back. I went to the surface one last time, stood in my basement, looking up at the house where I'd lived for so many years. Marlo came up behind me. "You should come down," she said. "In a minute." "Grandpa, if it happens while you're up here." "I know, I just need a minute." She waited with me. We stood there in the basement of the house Nathan Whitmore had built in 1952, the house that had protected this secret for so long. My phone buzzed, message from Zeke. "All sites are sealed. We did it. Whatever happens now, we gave people a chance." I texted back, "How many total?" "Just over 28,000. Not enough, but something." But at 28,000 out of hundreds of millions. A drop in the ocean, but a drop that mattered. "Okay," I said to Marlo, "let's go down." We descended together, sealed the inner doors behind us, 18 levels down, 280 feet below the surface. The deepest level was quieter. Most people were on the upper levels closer to the surface, not quite ready to face the full depth of where they were. but I went all the way down to the archive room where I'd added my own carving months ago. I read it again. Silas Whitmore, 2024. For Marlowe, for everyone who comes after. We're ready, we remember, we'll endure. And then I pulled out my chisel, started carving something new. Right below my name. Day 1, Baron, 3,500 souls. We wait, we hope, we survive. Marlowe watched me work. When I finished, she took the chisel from my hand. She carved 3 words, Marlowe Whitmore, 2024, adding her name to the family record. The newest watcher, the next generation. We stood there for a moment looking at our names carved in stone. Then we heard it, a rumble, deep and low. Not just sound, but sensation. The earth itself groaning. People on the upper levels started screaming. I grabbed Marlowe's hand, ran for the stairs. By the time we reached the first level, the rumbling had grown louder. The lights swayed, dust fell from the ceiling, and then through the ventilation shaft we heard it. A sound like the sky tearing open. A roar that went on and on and on. Yellowstone had erupted. The world above was ending, and we 3,500 souls in the belly of the earth could only wait. The shaking had stopped. The roar had faded to a distant rumble. We'd lost 2 ventilation shafts to collapsed rock, but the main systems held. We had air. We had water. We had survived the initial blast. I was in the main chamber with the leadership team, Dr. Kim, Pastor Reyes, Jack Henderson, Gus Marlowe, a few others. We'd rigged up a radio, trying to find any signal, any news. Most frequencies were dead, but on one channel we heard a voice, crackly, distant, but human. To all survivors, this is the emergency broadcast system. A super volcanic eruption has occurred at Yellowstone National Park at approximately 3:47 a.m. Mountain Time. The immediate blast zone is total loss. Ashfall is occurring across the western United States. All persons are advised to seek shelter immediately. Seal all doors and windows. Do not go outside. Do not breathe the ash. Further updates will be provided as available. This is not a test. This is not a box show. The signal cut out. I looked around the room at the faces of the people I'd chosen to lead. People I trusted. So, Pastor Reyes said quietly, now what? Now we wait, I said. We ration carefully. We keep people calm. We maintain hope. For how long? As long as it takes, Doctor. Kim shook her head. The supplies will last maybe 18 months if we're careful, 2 years at most, and that's assuming nothing goes wrong. Then we make it last 2 years, and we hope that's enough. Enough for what? For the ash to settle, for the air to clear, for the sun to come back. Gus looked at me, and if it doesn't, I didn't have an answer for that. But Marlowe did. Then we dig deeper, she said. We find more resources. We adapt. We survive. That's what we do. That's what the Watcher have always done. She was right. For 186 years since Elijah Whitmore and his friends first carved into solid rock, we'd been adapting, surviving, enduring. We'd survived volcanic winters and earthquakes and droughts and dust bowls and wars. We'd survived because we prepared, because we remembered, because we passed the knowledge down. And we'd survive this too. I stood up, addressed the room. Everyone listen, I know you're scared. I'm scared too, we all are. The world we knew is gone. Maybe for a few months, maybe for years. We don't know yet. I paused, let that sink in. But we have something that most people don't. We have shelter. We have food and water. We have each other, and we have the knowledge of everyone who came before us, everyone who survived when the world turned against them. I gestured to the walls, to the carved names, to the history written in stone. They made it through, and so will we. Not because we're special, but because we're prepared, because we work together, because we don't give up. The room was silent, people looking at me, wanting to believe. We're going to establish routines, work schedules, school for the kids, worship services, community meetings. We're going to make this place feel like home, because for the next year or two, it is home. I looked at Marlowe, at Gus, at the others. And when it's time, when the world above is ready, we'll go back up. We'll rebuild. We'll tell the story of what happened here, and we'll teach the next generation to watch, to prepare, to remember. I took a breath. That's what it means to be a watcher. It's not about fear. It's about love. Love for the people we might save. Love for the future we might build. Love strong enough to carry us through the dark. Pastor Reyes stood up. Amen. Others echoed him. Amen. And then spontaneously people started singing an old hymn, Amazing Grace. The sound filled the stone chambers, echoed through the tunnels, rose up the ventilation shafts toward a sky that was probably black with ash. I thought about the government shelters, about the other sites, about Zeke in Colorado and the other keepers scattered across the West. I hoped they were okay. Hoped their people were singing too. We'd done what we could, saved who we could save. Now we waited. Day one was over. We'd survived it. Tomorrow would be day two, then day three, then 100, then 500. However long it took. We had time. We had each other. We had hope. That was enough. That had to be enough. I looked at Marlo. She was crying, but she was also smiling. We made it, Grandpa. We made it. What do we do now? I thought about Elijah, about Nathan, about all the watchers who'd come before. Now we live, we endure, we wait for the sun to come back. And if it doesn't, then we become the sun for each other, for the children, for everyone who needs light in the darkness. She hugged me, tight. Around us 3,500 people, scared, grieving, but alive, alive and together. We were the survivors, the watchers, the keepers of the flame. And this was just the beginning of the story we'd tell when we emerged. The story of how humanity endured its darkest night and lived to see the dawn. 2 years later, the sun came back, not bright, not warm like it used to be, but visible. A pale disk in a gray sky burning through the ash that still hung in the upper atmosphere. We'd lost 412 people in those 2 years. Disease mostly, the elderly going first, then a few children, despite Dr. Kim's best efforts. Infections that should have been treatable became deadly in the confined space. 3 women died in childbirth. A cave-in on level 7 killed 6 people before we could dig them out. But 3,088 had survived. 3,088 souls emerging from the earth, blinking in the weak sunlight, seeing what was left of the world. It wasn't much. The desert was buried under 6 inches of ash, gray as far as the eye could see. No plants, no animals, just wind pushing ash into dunes like snow. But it was better than the darkness. We'd stayed in contact with the other sites. The radio network had held, though barely. All 7 sites survived. 26,300 people total. The government shelters. We'd heard from Morrison twice in the first 6 months. Then nothing. We didn't know if they'd made it or not. Part of me hoped they had. Part of me wondered if their silence was answer enough. 26,000 out of how many we didn't know. The government broadcast had stopped after 3 months. We'd heard rumors. Fragments. Maybe 10% of the population survived. Maybe less. But we survived, and now we'd rebuild. We set up temporary shelters on the surface, started rationing our remaining supplies, sent out scouting parties to other sites, other cities looking for survivors. We found some, not many, but some. Small groups, families who'd sheltered in basements, mines, caves, people who'd gotten lucky, people who'd prepared in their own ways. And slowly, carefully, we started to build something new. I was 70 years old now, too old for heavy work, but not too old to teach. I taught the young ones, taught them how we survived, taught them the history, made sure they understood what their ancestors had built, made sure they'd be ready next time, because there would be a next time. The pattern continued, 40 to 50 years. By then I'd be gone. But Marlo wouldn't, and her children wouldn't. They'd be the watchers, the next generation. One evening, 6 months after we emerged, I stood with Marlo and Gus at the entrance to our site. The stone door was propped open now. People could come and go, but we kept it maintained, kept it ready, just in case. Think we'll ever need it again, Marlo asked. Your children might, or their children. The earth doesn't forget. Then we won't either, I smiled. No, we won't. Gus cleared his throat. You know, I've been thinking about what you said down there, Silas. About becoming the sun for each other. Yeah, I think we did that. Not just survived, we kept each other human, kept each other hoping. That's worth something. It's worth everything, I said. We stood in silence watching the pale sun set over the ash-covered desert. Silas, Gus said quietly, I'm glad we found each other. Glad we did this together. Me too, old friend. He put his hand on my shoulder, squeezed once, then headed back to his tent. I stayed there with Marlo a little longer. Grandpa, she said, do you think we'll ever know for sure about Mom and Dad? It was the question she'd been carrying for 2 years. The question I couldn't answer. Probably not, I said. The people who might have known are likely dead now. The records are gone, we'll never have proof. But you still think, I think your parents loved you. I think they'd be proud of you. And I think that's what matters now. She nodded, wiped her eyes. Yeah, you're right. That night I went down one last time, all the way to the deepest level, to the archive room. I carved my final entry. Day 732, we emerged. 3,088 survived. The world is ash, but we endure. To whoever reads this next, remember, prepare, love. That is how we survive. And know this, you are not alone. We are here, we remember. We are watching. I set down the chisel. My hands were shaking. Too old for this now, but the words were there. Carved in stone. Permanent. For the next generation. For the next disaster. For the next time humanity needed to remember how to survive. I climbed back up, sealed the inner doors, left the site quiet and dark and waiting. Waiting for the next watcher. Waiting for the next story. Waiting for the next time the earth turned and humanity had to prove it deserved to survive. We'd proven it this time. We'd do it again. Because that's what we do. We watch, we prepare, we endure. We are the watchers. And our work is never done.